The thick, swirling fog blanketed Beacon Point like an ethereal shroud, muffling the usual crash of waves against the rocky shore. Silas Shanty hummed a tuneless melody as he diligently wound the clockwork mechanism in the lantern room, his hands moving with the practiced ease of long, ingrained habit. A man of peculiar tastes and, even more peculiar socks, Tadea's pair featured a vibrant blue stripe clashing with a dull gray. Silas found solace in the solitude and routine of tending Beacon Point. Suddenly, an odd rhythmic pulse echoed through the foggy air, emanating from the restless sea. Silas paused, head cocked like a curious seagull. Intrigued despite himself, Silas hurried to his antiquated radio equipment, fingers fumbling with switches and dials. He tried to capture the elusive signal on wax cylinders, but it proved as slippery as smoke. Just as he thought he had it locked in, the pulse would fade or distort, leaving only static and silence. As Silas grumbled in frustration, a sudden splash of color caught his eye through the misty windowpane. A small, garishly pink inflatable flamingo drifted by, bobbing on the choppy waves like an absurd castaway. Silas blinked, wondering if the fog was playing tricks on his mind as well as his ears. He shook his head and turned back to his logbook, a thick tome filled with his spidery script and precise diagrams. With great care, he recorded every detail of the anomalous signal, its frequency, duration, the intervals between pulses. It was an obsession bordering on mania, but Silas couldn't help himself. Patterns fascinated him, and this one refused to resolve into anything familiar. As he wrote, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered that something was amiss, that this signal was no mere trick of weather or equipment. Silas pushed the thought aside, attributing it to too many hours spent alone with his thoughts and the ceaseless whisper of the wine. The fog continued to swirl as Silas worked, the mysterious signal pulsing on like a heartbeat from the depths, waiting for someone to unravel its secret. And so began the strange saga of Beacon Point, one that would soon draw other players into its misty embrace and send Silas Shanty's orderly world spinning in directions he never could have imagined. A cloud of dust billowed behind the vintage car as it sputtered to a halt at the base of Beacon Point. The vehicle was a patchwork of faded blue paint and rust, its battered exterior a testament to many miles traversed in pursuit of forgotten histories. From the driver's seat emerged a woman with a fiery spirit that matched her untamed red hair whipping in the sea breeze. Beatrice B. Blackwood surveyed the lighthouse with keen eyes, a triumphant grin spreading across her freckled face. She had chased this signal across oceans and through dusty archives, and now here she was, standing at the threshold of what promised to be her greatest discovery yet. Silas Shanty watched the spectacle from his window above, his brow furrowed in curiosity and a hint of annoyance at this disruption to his carefully ordered whirl. "Ahoy there!" B called out, waving energetically as Silas approached. "I'm Beatrice Blackwood, retired maritime historian and amateur treasure hunter extraordinaire. I believe you've been picking up the same signal I have, the one that's been driving me mad for years." She didn't wait for a response before launching into her theory, hands gesticulating wildly. "It's got to be connected to the Seraphine, lost in that storm a century ago. Rumor has it she was carrying a fortune in gems and some mysterious artifact. And now, after all this time, her secret is finally ready to spill." Silas held up a hand, silencing B mid-rant. He regarded her coolly, taking in the wild hair, the manic eyes, the clothes that looked like they'd seen more adventures than wash days. "Miss Blackwood," he began, his voice as steady and unyielding as the lighthouse itself, "I am documenting an anomaly, nothing more. I have no interest in chasing ghosts or lost treasures." B scoffed, waving off Silas's skepticism like a bothersome fly. "Anomaly? Oh, you sweet summer child, this is no mere weather pattern. We're talking about the wreck of the Seraphine, the lost Blackwood fortune, a family legacy, and a secret that's been buried for far too long." She paused, leaning in conspiratorially. "I need your help, Mr. Shanty, your knowledge of this signal, your vantage point here at the lighthouse. Together we could unravel this mystery once and for all. Think of it, fame, fortune, a place in history." But Silas remained unmoved by Bea's impassioned plea. He shook his head firmly, hands clasped behind his back as he turned to gaze out at the restless sea. "I'm afraid I must decline your generous offer, Miss Blackwood. I have a duty here, a purpose. I am not some treasure hunter, chasing rainbows and legends." Bea opened her mouth to argue further, but thought better of it. Instead, she smiled slyly, a glint of determination in her eye. "Well then, Mr. Shanty, I wish you luck with your, but mark my words, that signal is leading somewhere, and when I find out where, well, don't say I didn't invite you along for the ride." With that, Bea turned on her heel and marched back to her car, leaving Silas standing alone at the base of his lighthouse, a sense of unease settling over him like a shroud. The signal pulsed in the distance, a ceaseless drumbeat urging him onward into uncharted waters, whether he was ready or not. As Bea's car roared off in a final burst of exhaust and gravel, Silas stood watching until it disappeared from view. He sighed heavily, turning back towards the sanctuary of his lighthouse home. But even as he climbed the familiar stairs, he couldn't shake the feeling that Bea Blackwood was right about one thing. Something strange was happening at Beacon Point, and for better or worse, Silas Shanty was now inextricably tangled in its web. Silas hunched over his desk, the flickering lamplight casting long shadows across the yellowed newspaper clippings and dusty tomes scattered before him. The persistent signal from the sea seemed to echo in his mind, driving him to unravel its mystery despite his initial reluctance. As he pored over the fragile papers, a headline caught his eye: "Serafina lost at sea. Valuable cargo believed to be on board." The article spoke of a ship laden with rare gemstones and an intricate wooden box, its origins and purpose unknown. Silas felt a chill run down his spine as he read about the ship's captain, Silas Blackwood, a man known for his ruthlessness and secrecy. Lost in thought, Silas barely noticed the sudden gust of wind that rattled the windows, the signal outside intensifying in response to some unseen force. His mind drifted back to Bea Blackwood's impassioned words, her conviction that the signal was connected to the Serafina. Against his better judgment, he found himself drawn into the mystery, compelled by a sudden need to know. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, and Silas saw it, a stylized illustration in one of the books, depicting a man who could only be Captain Blackwood burying something on a beach that looked hauntingly similar to the one below Beacon Point. The image was fleeting but seared itself into Silas's mind. As quickly as it had begun, the storm abated, leaving behind an eerie calm and a signal that pulsed with renewed vigor. Silas leaned back in his chair, his heart racing as he stared out at the sea, a new determination burning within him. He knew what he had to do next. He had to find Bea Blackwood and convince her that together they could unravel the secrets of the Serafina and the mysterious signal that had brought them both to this point. With a heavy sigh, Silas stood up, his joints creaking in protest. He gathered the newspaper clippings and books, tucking them under his arm as he made his way towards the door. The signal seemed to guide him, its pulsing rhythm now a siren's call that he could no longer ignore. As he stepped out into the night, Silas couldn't shake the feeling that he was being drawn into something far greater than himself, a mystery that would change his life forever. The rain pounded against Silas and Bea as they trudged through the sand, the newspaper article clutched under Bea's arm flapping in the wind like an unhinged bird. The beach stretched out before them, a desolate expanse of gray where the sea met the land in a churning embrace. Silas squinted, his eyes straining against the downpour. "There," he shouted over the howling gale, pointing a gloved finger at a dark shape half buried in the sand near the water's edge. They waded through the surf, waves crashing round their knees, until they reached the object. It was a chest, its wooden surface worn smooth by time and tide. Bea dropped to her knees, brushing away the clinging sand with trembling fingers. "This could be it," she whispered, half to herself. "The key to everything." Silas knelt beside her, his heart pounding in his chest as he helped pry open the lid. It creaked open reluctantly, revealing a stack of yellowed papers tied with a rotting cord. B carefully untied the bundle and began to read aloud. "Have become obsessed," she read, "the signal that haunts my nights and days. I believe it is a key, a siren song leading to a hidden cove where treasure beyond imagining awaits." Silas listened intently as B flipped through page after page of Captain Blackwood's increasingly erratic scribblings. The captain was convinced that the signal held the secret to a vast fortune, and his journals charted his descent into obsession. "Have hidden this box," B read from the final entry, "the hope that it may protect the secret until the time is right. May God forgive me for what I have done." As they sat there, poring over the journals, the storm reached a crescendo round them. The wind screamed like a banshee and the rain lashed their faces, but neither of them noticed, lost in the revelation of Captain Blackwood's true obsession. Suddenly, Silas glanced up at the lighthouse, his eyes widening as he saw the signal flickering through the sheets of rain. "B," he said urgently, "the storm. It is obscuring the signal." She looked up, following his gaze. The beam of light from the lantern room was barely visible in the deluge. "What does that mean?" she asked. Silas stood slowly, a new resolve hardening in his eyes. "It means," he said quietly, "that my duty as keeper isn't just to maintain the light. It's to uncover the truth, no matter how buried it may be." He held out a hand to B, pulling her to her feet beside him. "And it looks like that truth is going to lead us on quite the adventure," he added with a wry smile. As the storm subsided, an eerie calm settled over Beacon Point. The rain ceased its relentless pounding against the windows, and the wind's howl diminished to a distant whisper. Silas Shanty peered out from his perch high above, watching the fog begin to lift, revealing glimpses of the restless sea. He turned his attention back to the mysterious signal, now pulsing with renewed clarity through the lull in the storm. With trembling hands, he began to decipher the code, transcribing each dash and dot onto a scrap of paper. Minutes stretched into hours as he worked feverishly, driven by a sudden sense of purpose. As the final message took shape beneath his pen, Silas found himself staring at a confession, penned in the spidery script of Captain Silas Blackwood. The letter spoke of a family feud, a rift between brothers that had torn the Blackwood clan asunder. It told of betrayals and accusations, of pride and stubbornness left unchecked. Captain Blackwood hadn't he buried treasure, he'd hidden this very letter, a desperate attempt to expose the truth behind Seraphina's tragic demise. The signal was his final cry from beyond the grave, a plea for justice that had echoed through the decades, waiting for someone to hear and act upon it. Silas leaned back in his chair, the weight of this revelation settling over him like a cloak. He thought of B, her fiery determination to uncover the truth, and how she'd been drawn here by the same signal that now lay decoded before him. A slow smile spread across Silas' face, wry and knowing. He understood now the true meaning of his duty as keeper of Beacon Point, not to seek out glittering treasures or lost riches, but to preserve the truth, no matter how uncomfortable or unsettling it might be. As if summoned by this realization, Silas' gaze fell upon the inflatable flamingo, now deflated and discarded in the corner of the room. A symbol of the whimsy that lay beneath the weight of their discovery, it seemed a fitting reminder not to take themselves too seriously amidst the swirl of mystery. With a newfound sense of purpose, Silas stood up, the decoded letter clutched tightly in his hand. He would share this revelation with B, and together they would unravel the final threads of the Blackwood family saga. The signal had led them here for a reason. Now it was their turn to ensure that Captain Blackwood's desperate plea did not fade away into oblivion once more.